Hi there, you're listening to the Estranged Heart podcast, and I'm your host, Kreed Revere. Welcome back to our returning listeners, and if this is your first time here, thank you for selecting this podcast to listen to. As we begin today's episode, I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and listen with an open heart. But first, the regular disclaimer. I am not a licensed therapist or counselor. Nothing within this podcast should be considered or taken as therapy. If you are in need of therapeutic support such as counseling, please seek out a therapist near you. Today's episode is titled Estrangement, Trend or Symptom. And I know this is probably not going to sit well with the estranged parents and will probably sit really well with the estranged adult children who listen to this podcast. So I hope that each quote unquote side, if you will listen with an open heart, listen with a filter of curiosity as opposed to defensiveness or judgments. And I think that you'll find some interesting tidbits of information within today's episode. So, some announcements and reminders. The waitlist is growing for the Estranged Mothers Support Group. If you are interested in that, please let me know. The next cohort will start in uh, 2 weeks, I believe, from yesterday. So it will start on May the 6th and will be at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, and that will run every other Saturday. But if you're interested in joining, please send me an email at theestrangedheart@gmail.com. Again, theestrangedheart@gmail.com, and I'm happy to get you on the list. I will go down the list, and those who respond, first come, first serve, and then it is capped. There is a maximum number of folks that can join. I don't like to have extremely large support groups because I like to be able to give one-on-one attention and be able to help support individually as much as I can within a group setting. I want to thank the number the estranged adult children that have reached out as of late has been phenomenal, and I want to thank you for listening to the podcast and for reaching out, and I want to thank you for sharing it. There's been a few estranged adult children who have reached out recently to let me know that they have shared the podcast with their estranged parent and suggested having the parent listen to the podcast and the episodes to help them begin on their reconciliation path, kind of as a first step, if you will. And I appreciate you finding enough value in the podcast that you would do that. That speaks volumes to me and the work that I do. And I want to extend my gratitude for that. Thank you so much. I'd also like to send a huge thank you out to an estranged mom who was a coaching client of mine and ended up terming services early because she received notification that chances of reconciliation are not on the table for her at this point in time. And she's done enough self work on herself where she feels like she's in a she's in a good place to be able to handle this right now, and um, you know, feels supported in her with her family and friends, and knows and has resources to find support if she needs to at the spur of the moment kind of thing. And so she took those prepaid sessions that she had previously, and she uh, asked that I forward those to perhaps an estranged mom who has a financial need as well as a need to be supported. And so I want to thank her for that. She didn't have to do that. And I know that the moms that are receiving these funds are so, so unbelievably grateful. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. And finally, A big announcement. Starting in June, I have invited estranged adult child, formerly estranged adult child, who is now reconciled with his mom, AC Bergenfisher, to be a guest co host with me once a month on the podcast. And so AC and I will be having conversations, and there will be more to come about specifics and on what Sundays he will our conversations will air. So I hope that you're as excited about that as I am. I know that estranged parents are always wanting to hear more from the estranged adult child's perspective to be able to learn and grow and find understanding and help to clarify some things. And I feel certain that having AC as a guest co-host with me will help with that. And I'm hoping that it will also help some estranged adult children to feel like they can come on the show and share their stories. I know that I would like that. And I also recognize and understand the fear involved with that and the hesitation. And so I'm hoping that with AC helping me to steer the ship once a month, that you will feel like you can be in a safe space and have someone else that can recognize um, your point of view, your perspective. I mean, I do as well. I have once been an estranged adult child, but I also have been an estranged mom. So I recognize that there's a bit of a difference there. So on to today's episode. Today's quote: just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean it's the right way or the most healthy way. And that's how I've said that quote. There's lots of different variations of that quote out there, but that is mine. And that quote really um, kind of underscores the topic today, in that a lot of parents think it's never been this way before until social media came along, and therapy and therapists are leading the charge for estrangement. And I have to say that I've always, me personally, have always kicked back against well, this is the way it's always been done, so we just continue to do that. I don't find that to be helpful in any way, shape, or form. I don't find it to be healthy, really. If you can show me the value and the purpose, and I can find value and purpose in maintaining the way things have always been done, then that's one thing. But it's a rare occasion that that happens. I think that we as humans are so against change, so scared of change, so wrapped up in fear about change, that we begin slapping on labels and judging and making assumptions to try to mitigate the fear and the uncertainty. And in reality, we kind of sort of just need to lean into it. And I know that for a lot of people, that's really a scary thing. And I get that. I understand that. I'm in one of those situations right now in my personal life, and it's really, really super scary. And in the end, I know that I have to step into that fear, because the more that I don't step into that fear, the more of a stranglehold it has on me. And I'm not able to think clearly, and I'm not able to process, and I'm not able to be rational, and I'm not able to be all of these things that we want and think that we're being, when in reality we're not, because fear has us, like I said, it's a stranglehold on us. And so it just hijacks all of our sane ways of being in the world. So that's my take on that quote. So today's episode is on: is estrangement a trend? Is estrangement a symptom of something? I think that most people, if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you understand my perspective on this, or know my perspective on this probably. And I, while it may appear to be a trend, and it might be a trend by definition, if you will, and I use that very loosely. I don't think it is. I don't think it is a trend in the way that most people look at it and look at the definition of trend. I do think it's a symptom. What I think is, as Tina Gilbertson says, your estranged adult child might be a part of a trend. However, it's not the reason for the estrangement, right? She goes on to say that estranged parents overthink about the support that their estranged adult children are receiving and underestimate the forces present telling them to reconnect. Our fear commands our attention. So I think it's worth exploring this a little bit more. Um, our children, times have changed, and thank God. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be back in the horse and buggy days. I don't want to be back in the black and white TV or no TV at all. Thank goodness we have evolved and things have changed over the years and decades. And that can't help, I mean, by definition, it can't, can't help but change along with that. So what is happening with our kids in this quote unquote trend, if you will? Let's look at this a little bit. Let's pull back and look at the scope of things. In recent decades, the resources available for estranged for adult children, um, to recognize unhealthy patterns, to be able to choose to separate from people in their lives, all of these things, those resources have become immense and at their fingertips and ready at the go. They don't have to leave their house. Back in the day, if we wanted to find something out, we either normally had to go to the neighbors, or to a family gathering, or to the library, kind of thing, to find information out. And our kids don't have to do that. They find it's readily available. Google is at their fingertips. And then in addition to that, not only do they it's is information readily available right there, they have found that they are not alone. They have found they're not alone in how they have been feeling about their parent and the struggles that they're having. So they have found and have come together online, as our young generations do, and are finding that support. Now, support can be a good thing and it can be a not so good thing, right? And this is one of the reasons why my support group that I have, both my Zoom support groups as well as the online Facebook support group. There are I don't I don't allow, as I've talked about before, I don't allow slamming and trashing of the estranged adult children in my groups. I try to keep the focus on the parents and what we can learn and how we can move forward and how can we take responsibility and accountability and all of these things, that keeping the focus on ourselves in order to help transform and change and move into reconciliation and have a relationship with our children. So, but what I've noticed is, and I think others would agree with me here, is that so people are talking about estrangement more openly now, right? And with our kids, they're getting all of that stuff online, and slowly but surely the parents are coming on board and looking for support online. That's usually the first step, and then they're looking for more of a Zoom or in-person type of support. And but we haven't, as parents, haven't caught up to the speed and the quantity that the kids have, right? And so that obviously takes, it's a big presence in the world today. And where there is talk about struggle, there is generally more support. And so, sympathy for sympathy for being estranged doesn't necessarily equate to support for being estranged too, right? But we have to let's dissect what the support is. So in my groups, I've noticed, I mean, I can bank on it. If someone makes a post about poor me, my kids are up to blame here. They're so cruel, and they're doing this, that, and the other thing to me. Man, the support that they get, the sympathy that they get is wild. Absolutely, utterly wild. Things get out of control. I'm having to block members, remove members from the group, send out reminders of group rules and all these things. Let someone post something about, I'm really trying to take accountability, and this is hurtful, but I understand where my child's coming from, and I just hope that I get the chance to one day be able to show them how much I've learned and grown, and that I'm doing things differently in my life now. Those posts might get, I don't know, 3 comments, right? Compared to the 35, 50 comments on the other type of post. So it's astounding to me at that difference. And I think that what we're seeing is we see something similar with the kids, and the parents are in such a state of, and again, a lot of this depends on the where they are within their estrangement experience. So if they're recently estranged, as what happened to me, you know, total shock, grief, I don't understand what the hell has happened. What did I do that was so horrible? Victim, victim, victim mode, right? Which is normal when you're faced with something that is seemingly blown out of the water, and you're like catapulted into this other world that you know nothing about, and you're trying to find your footing, right? It's normal for us to point the finger out there and blame, and it's everyone else's fault but our own. And I'm not saying do not don't take this wrong. I'm not saying that this is parents' fault. I'm saying that this is the process, right? So as you move through this experience of being estranged, a lot of that initial shock and things that wears off, and then you settle into this place of grieving, and not so much the self-pity, if you will, the victimhood. And then sometimes there's rage and there's anger, and then we move through all the stages of grief. But the point that I'm trying to make here is estrangement isn't this latest fad, right? It's not the latest and greatest thing that kids are like, "Oh yeah, count me up, sign me up. I'm going to jump on this train." That's not what's happening. What is happening is that this estrangement is a symptom of something bigger. And we, estranged adult children and estranged parents, are finding their people, quote unquote, and they're able to find their people in large scale numbers now because we have access to the internet. So we can gather with people online, communicate with people online from across the world, not just in our hometown, not just with people who are our neighbors, right? So we're able to come together in larger numbers, if you will, and be able to share our stories. And because of the internet, right? Things People are more vocal about things. And I will say, one of the dangers of the internet is that People can, I call them keyboard warriors, and I get my fair share of people who, spout off to me and don't know anything about me, haven't given me the time of day to be able to share anything about where I'm coming from or what have you, and have automatically placed judgments against me. And I'm saying the same thing. Yes, there are kids that do that with their parents. There are parents that do that with their kids. What I'm asking you to do is to pull back and look at this from a larger perspective. This is not a trend. If we look at how we have parented our children who have now become adults, there are there are repercussions that come with our parenting styles, right? With enmeshment and all of these things. Yes, it's language that most of the parents aren't aware of. They've never heard of it. A lot of them never heard of the word estrangement until they are find themselves estranged. There's a difference in that way, but the how do I want to say this? It's when oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank here. When you're able to come together with people who have a similar experience as you, the first thing that I see that happens is, oh my God, I'm not alone. And you can commiserate with my misery, right? And for some people, they're not able to move beyond that because the hurt is so great. The hurt is and pain is so intense. And so for that being either the parent or the child, I'm asking parents to stop and consider that your adult child is not jumping on some bandwagon in order to hurt you and impose punishment upon you and to be cruel to you and all of those things. That might be your interpretation of it, but there is something else at play. And oftentimes many something else is at play. When I talk with the kids tell me, I don't have trust in my parent. I've trusted and trusted and trusted, and every time I trust, that trust is broken. I tell them I have this issue or that issue or these issues, and they tell me they're sorry, things will change, and nothing changes. And so they go on, right? So they've lost trust. They tell me all of these things, and all of these things come along, and the symptom is estrangement. It really is that simple. As much as we don't want to think that, as much as we don't want to believe that, as much as all of these things, I talk all the time. The kids never tell me I hate my parent. They tell me I love my parent. I wish my parent would listen, right? So what they're finding is they're finding community. They're finding community around their pain, just as you find community around your pain when you join a support group. I've said it before, I'll say it again. When I look at estranged adult children and the things that they're posting on social media as comments to somebody's post or things like that, I see the exact same thing happening in the parents groups. So, are parents jumping on this trend? Are parents jumping on the trend to say, I don't want anything to do with this kid if they can't take me as I am, right? I don't know. I just think that I've never believed that this is just a trend and that things are, I mean, things happen for a reason. Nothing in this life, nothing in this life happens out of the blue and just boom, here it is. That doesn't happen. So why did we think that estrangement, that our kids are just following the crowd? Maybe there's something there where they're finding that community. where they within community, and I believe I've made reference to this in a previous episode, and I'll make reference to it again. I'm not comparing the two together, but it's something. Look beyond the labels, right? People join gangs because they feel seen, heard, and validated by the people in those gangs. They feel a sense of quote unquote family. They feel a sense of being accepted for who they are. They feel a sense of I belong. And that's what happens when we find community for a pain that we have. It's the same thing with people that go to AA, people that go to NA, people that go to Al-Anon. They're going because, oh my gosh, these people understand what I'm going through. They understand my pain and all of these things, right? And just as in my group, I'm sure there are people within the groups that the adult children, the communities that the adult children are in, that may not necessarily want to stand up and speak out about, maybe seeing things from the other person's perspective and things like that. And that's because of all the judgment. I see it in my groups. That's why I am such a staunch. I'm really strict with my group, and people get really upset with me because I won't allow those things, because I'm trying to keep the space safe for those people who want to come in and learn how to do things differently and are interested in learning about things beyond what appears to be on the surface, right? So this tide will turn, if you will, as long as the parents can get on board with helping to turn that tide. We need to help turn it. And we're not going to help turn it as long as we're standing in judgment of it. As long as we are, you know, poo-pooing it and saying it's a trend and all these things, because in that you are invalidating your estranged adult child, just as you were invalidated when you were a child and at other times in your life. So I know I've been all over the map in today's episode, and I apologize for that. There's so much wrapped up in this, and maybe I need to do a second episode that is a little more clear and succinct and all of that. The bottom line comes down to be cautious of the labels that you're placing on other people before you can pull back and look at the larger picture. And remember that when you are in it, when you are in the weeds, so to speak, when you are in the forest, it's really hard to see that bigger picture, that aerial view. You're not able to do that because you're down in it. And so perhaps maybe there could be a different perspective if you pulled back and looked at it from a higher elevation, right? I don't think that this is a trend, if you will. I do think that this is a symptom of other things, other bigger, deeper things that are causing hurt and pain with our adult children. And I hope that you can begin to look at it from that perspective as well. Look at the difference and begin to see things from a bit of a different perspective. So I'll leave it there for this week's episode, and thank you for your patience and bearing with me as I talk through this. I don't read off of a script, and that's obvious, but it's obvious because I feel like being here and my vulnerability is what I teach. And if I'm not walking my talk, then I don't know why I'm here. Until next time. This brings this episode to a close. I hope that this time together was time you feel well spent, and that you are able to find some takeaway nuggets to help you on your journey, wherever you may be on your estrangement and reconciliation path. If you feel you've received something helpful or positive from this podcast, please consider following us, sharing this podcast with others, leaving a positive review, perhaps entertaining becoming a guest on our show, or following us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok under the same name, The Estranged Heart. As a reminder, there is an online support group on Facebook. If you are a estranged mom who identifies as being spiritual and approaches estrangement with a sense of curiosity rather than blame and judgment, and desire to do inner self-work and reflection, please seek us out. We can be found at facebook.com/estranged mothers support group. And lastly, if you are an estranged parent or an estranged adult child and would like to have your story shared on the podcast, anonymously or not, please reach out to me via email at theestrangedheart@gmail.com.